Friends, this is our VPC devotional, daily devotional, and it is August 21st, Monday, and I'm going to read a famous verse from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, verse 13. This is one of the most shocking moments, really, for Jesus to say this publicly to the group that he said it to. People must have been shaking their heads at the time. Let's listen for the word of the Lord, Matthew 5:13, A and B. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, become tasteless, how can that saltiness ever be restored? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. This is the word of the Lord. Well, I hope you feel valuable today as you're sitting in your chair or on your couch, or you're maybe even got this going in your car. Drive safely if you're doing that. Maybe you're in your office or your study. You have a place where you do your devotionals. I wonder, as you think about yourself in your life, if you feel valuable. Jesus was trying to communicate to this group of Galilean peasants that they were extremely valuable. We don't think of salt as an expensive commodity. You can go to the grocery store and buy a great big container of salt for very little money. And in fact, we're a little suspicious about too much salt in our diets these days. A lot of us have low salt diets. But in fact, salt in the ancient world played a very different role. Salt was a commodity. And of course, they did have currencies in the ancient world. They had coinage, but they also had a barter economy. And so when we do too, we have a barter exchange economy in many ways. When you trade in your car, you're bartering your car, the value of your car, for another car. I did that this past week. I traded two cars for one car. A 20-year-old car and a 15-year-old car for a 10-year-old car. I think it was a pretty good deal. We'll see. But that's a barter situation. Now, in the ancient world, salt was a medium of exchange. It was very valuable. In fact, Roman soldiers were sometimes paid by their government in salt because they could exchange it for many other things. And our word salary actually comes from that word salt, salary, salt, salary. They're connected, to be paid. To be called the salt of the earth was not to be called a table condiment, but instead it was a huge eye-opening compliment. It implies that we're very valuable and that we should have a worldwide impact. You are the salt of the earth. Quite a statement. This passage is wonderful in that it rules out certain ways of following God. There is a separatist way of following God where we abstract ourselves from the life of the world in general because we're afraid the life of the world might corrupt us, and we form our own communities that are separatist. Oftentimes these communities can be beautiful in many ways, but we're not really a separatist group that is awaiting transport to another place called heaven. We believe that God will renew the entire cosmos, including the earth, that he's in a restoration project, and that we're part of that project, that we are literally dispersed like salt would be in food in order to do a couple of things. And one of those is that we are to be within a culture and a world that is often secular and different in outlook, and we are supposed to be enhancing and also preserving. We'll get to that later in the week in the midst of that culture. This engagement is primary. Even though we risk when we engage with the world that we'll lose our distinctiveness. That instead of the world becoming more like us, we'll become more like the world. And that's the story of Christian history, is really a struggle not to adopt all the values of whatever culture people are in, but to be able to maintain distinctly Christian outlook and values, and to continue to be salt and light, rather than just becoming, as Jesus says, tasteless. That's always a danger. Salt is largely invisible. Isn't that interesting? Salt is invisible, but it changes the character of the substances that it is absorbed into. I wonder where you are invisibly at work, making a difference for Jesus in the world. Do a little inventory of your life and think about some of the places where you are, whether you're retired or working, It could be a job. It could be a volunteer situation. You could be in a club. You could be part of an activity. You could be in a neighborhood. And in all those ways, there's perhaps an invisibility to the work that you do of encouragement, of blessing, of friendship, of sharing, and of witness. Let's take a moment to pray. Lord, help us to see how we can be at work in the neighborhood, the company, the school, the club, and in all the other groups and settings that we inhabit. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen.